Hello and welcome to Making Events Matter. I'm Dom Honey from Event Results, and I'm here with my friend and long-time collaborator, Steve Bather, head honcho of the Realise Group. We've spent our careers turning events from just another gathering to making them matter. And today we're talking about hybrid events. Hello, Steve.
Hi, Tom. How's
How
it
are
going?
you?
Yeah, pretty good.
Good,
So I guess
good.
before we really get going, we need to establish what we perceive as a hybrid event. So what do you kind of term the hybrid event? Because people
Yeah,
use distributed,
yes.
remote, virtual, and all sorts. So hybrid.
Yeah, I know the terminology can be confusing and people use different words. So for me, hybrid is where you have an event that includes both in room attendees and participants, as well as people who are online. But those people online are not just watching a live stream of the speakers, but they are properly involved in the event. They're able to contribute feedback, put their cameras on so that both people online and in the room can hear and see them. And they can do all the normal things that they would do if they were actually in person at the event. For example, networking, seeing the speaker biographies, engaging with all the content, regardless of how it's delivered. So it's a true hybrid event. That,
Right. So I
that,
think I think, and we build this into our design. So when we know we're doing a hybrid event, irrespective of the number of people who are going to show up in person and the number of people that we're going to accommodate online, the number one criteria is that their experience at the event is irrespective of whether they're there in person or remote. And as you've just said, we look at equalizing the experience so that their ability to contribute and engage with the event is very similar,
yeah.
irrespective again whether you're online or not.
I mean, we when we run our hybrid events, we want both audiences to have the same or almost the same experience as one another. We don't treat the online participants as inferior, or that all they need to do is hear the speakers and that's enough. We want to join up the audiences so that everybody can see and interact with everybody, even to the extent if were running, let's say, table breakouts or breakout rooms, we still want the online audience to participate in the same way. And equally, if there's networking going on in the room, we want people online to participate and be able to network not just with the online participants, but all those who are in room as well, and vice versa. So we want to make sure that the experience is the same for both audiences.
So just take us back a little bit. When did you first come across the potential for there to be kind of this hybrid style of event? And let's discuss what the kind of benefits are to the client and the participants. But yeah, when did you first come across it?
So that would have been 15 or plus years ago. I mean, we were maybe not large conferences at that stage. Bandwidth was a bit of an issue, both for the participant and for venues back then. And we'll come on to those sorts of technology questions later, I think. But we were sharing the in-room experience with online participants a long time ago, quite a long time before I would say sort of the event apps have developed as they have now. So we're able to stream live through the same event app that supports the entire meeting. But so for quite a while. How about you?
Yeah. Well, I think it's similar. We started playing around with the technology that was emerging around 10, 15 years ago, beginning to pitch it to clients as an option. I think some of the first things that happened were we were able to offer, say, presenters who weren't able to be there in person, but were kind of, distinct and essential to the conference or the event, inviting them to be a remote presenter. And that's either a pre-recording, which we've done for many decades, but having them there and then able to perhaps run a Q&A, be part of a Q&A afterwards, or even run a workshop stream in parallel with others that are going on in the room by a remote kind of host, if you like. All those things are optional, and we'll come on to how we set that up and how we manage those presenters a little bit later. But let's just dig into some of the benefits, really, because of course COVID and the pandemic and the lockdown forced a lot of people to consider different ways of working. So when we think about the kind of the technical requirements or the ability of the remote participants, we're talking ensuring it's convenient and flexible for them, so we can manage around time zones. We can design the event so that it's convenient to them. We don't expect people to sit there for 5-6 hours as they would perhaps in a room, even though we break it up with workshops and table group discussions and Q&As, not just presentations. But we can be far more flexible in terms of numbers, locations. It's much more cost sensitive, of course, because it's much cheaper to have people dial in and participate online. The venue requirements are different. You need good quality, high bandwidth internet. Technology has to be enabled so that you have two-way communication with those participants so that they can hear everything that goes on in the room. And in fact, just reflecting back to a recent event, one of the things that we have to manage very carefully is actually the in-room microphones. So that when you get questions from the floor, you need to wait until the microphone's there so that, first of all, it's recorded because we video everything, but also the remote participants can then hear what's being said in the room, because it's really annoying to be kind of excluded from that discussion by not being able to hear it. So there are sort of things and adjustments that we have to make in the room as well as out of the room.
But it's also quite good that we can also invite online participants to ask questions live into the event, the hybrid event. So they're not just there observing and necessarily typing or contributing online, but they can also switch their camera on, switch their mic on at certain times and participate in Q&As or audience discussions in the same way that someone in the room is doing. And we obviously encourage that facilitatively. We encourage that all the time. So we make sure that as the people in the room, those who are remote have this access to what we've talked about before on previous episodes, the multi-channel communications that we design into events. And that, we'll come into the technology a little bit in a minute, but that means that people can type a comment or question. They can request, through the video channel to raise a hand and ask a question. And they can also participate in breakout groups, table groups in the room, breakout groups and so on. And we've also played around with a combination of, you remember once we had people who were hosting table groups in the room, and all the participants in the table group were remote. So, we set up different laptop screens and different applications and so on, but, that became possible as well. Really, again, just reiterating that we want the remote participants to have a very similar experience to those people in the room. Yeah, and I suppose it's probably easy for people to listening to us for the last few minutes talking about this, thinking, oh, this sounds really complicated. There's a lot of technology involved, and I don't really want that to get in the way of my event. And I think what I would say to them worrying about that, that's something that we worry about. And from the participant perspective, regardless of whether in person or online, their experience is actually very streamlined and very straightforward. So if they're online, they're probably using a screen like a laptop screen and a browser, but they have exactly the same technology interface as the in-person audience, who are probably using the mobile app version, which is on their phone and is really convenient because it's a handheld device. So they don't need the video, etc., and the bigger screen necessarily. And we handle the planning. We handle the advice on the agenda and the different session formats. And then we are the ones that liaise directly with the AV team that either we've appointed in country who can do the job, or we bring our own crew if it's more local, i.e. in the UK. So we're the main liaison. Steve, you're worrying about the event design and the agenda and working with the client on the different sessions, etc. And then front of house and coordinating with me live, and I'll be worrying about the digital side of things and the AV and making sure that the streaming's going smoothly, etc. So that all works really well and has done over the last few years.
And I think that's when we get into the room, or we're actually running the event. But there are certain criteria that are absolutely baseline before we even consider the technologies. And those are things like, as you said earlier, they've got to be simple to use from the participant perspective. So we not only select the tools for that, but we design the way the tools are used in the event to make it as simple as possible. We do not want people to be distracted, either in the room or remotely, by how they interact with the technology. It's just got to be simple. When they want to ask a question or make a comment or comment on somebody else's comment, they must be able to do that. And that also means that it doesn't require tutorials. And certainly we don't require people to download anything. There might be the odd app on a phone to make it more convenient with them. But we don't require any changes of the participants' laptops. A lot of the people we work with come from corporates and government, which just simply won't allow installations on their laptops. So that's got to be entirely in the browser. It's got to be encrypted. It's got to be secured to the latest levels to keep everything confidential and within the room. And, really those apps that are emerging now, those are the initial questions we ask about the integrity of the way they're built before we get into the feature functionality. But, you're an absolute specialist in, the event platforms, which we use, and we've talked about before in these podcasts, before, during, and quite significantly afterwards. But within the hybrid, what are the preferred platforms and what do they bring?
Well, I can talk definitely about the Swapcard platform, because that's what we use for many of our events where we're looking, but particularly for hybrid. And I think it's really important that when hybrid is, when we're working on a hybrid event, we've got a platform that A, we know, as you say, is simple to use, B, offers all the functionality that we are going to deploy across the event. And key for me in the Swapcard app is the presence and the networking. So for hybrid events where you can't see maybe half the audience, isn't it great that you can go to an attendee list, see profiles, see pictures, but crucially see presence, i.e. a green dot saying this person, these attendees are online. And that's regardless of whether the person is in room or or watching online or participating online. And so, and that doesn't stop networking, that facilitates it, so people can see who's around, they can see their profiles, they can connect, and they could even then establish, once they've had some messaging, they could even just have a video call during a break to have to reinforce that connection. And that can happen through the event, and it doesn't matter whether the participant is online or in person. So it continues to enable networking. And then of course the platform's great at delivering the video of the speakers and the stage or whatever's going on, and it also facilitates breakouts and handles all of that, all of those usual things that you do during an event brilliantly, but whether you're in person or online. And what about the other bit where we're seeking feedback from the audience? How do we do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the distinction we're making is that you're talking about the ability we're providing for participants to really connect and collaborate and network, during and post event. When we're actually talking about the content and we're listening to presentations, we're running table group discussions, we're running parallel workshop streams, We provide the opportunity for the participants themselves to kind of self-document their experience through that, and the conversations, and perhaps some of the discussions, and even some of the outcomes and decisions that they're making with their fellow participants.
Yeah.
And we've settled quite often in the past on XLeap, which is a configurable set of tools that go much beyond some of the simpler tools which allow Q&A or comments or simple polling. XLeap gives us a suite of tools that are configurable to absolutely support and underpin the process that we want the participants to go through. And that perhaps includes a divergent phase, an ideation phase, where we're hearing lots and lots of different perspectives from multinational participants or multidisciplinary participants. And we're also then able to use the same tools, which is hugely convenient, to run through those convergent phases where we're making sense of, we're theming things, we're grouping ideas, we're prioritizing ideas, we're measuring them against a single or even multiple criteria rating. And the tech has to be, as we said earlier, simple from the participants' use, driven and controlled by us, and designed in advance so we know what's coming up and how we're going to use the technology. But significantly, the tools we tend to use also have anonymity.
Yes.
So, and anonymity is this really kind of, it's been around for decades, and I was, instantly struck about the power of anonymity. When in the mid-90s, we were struggling with getting people to say what they actually think. Everybody knows stories about how groupthink has led to some of the most calamitous decisions ever made. The Americans sending the Cuban exiles into the Bay of Pigs is the classic example. But getting to the point where people feel able and willing to say what they think is really enabled by that initial anonymity, because then everything becomes discussable.
Yeah.
This way of taking the participants through that journey during the event so that they are self-documenting and being responsible along with us for the quality of the outcome and the report. And we're simply providing this platform and this tool to allow them to do that.
Yeah, it's incredibly powerful when whether you're providing that just for an in-room audience, but it really comes into its own when you're joining up an in-room audience with a large number of online participants, and it works whether it's 20 people collaborating or whether it's 250 people collaborating or more. So it's that anonymity, that ease of use, that flexibility, the different uses of the tools really supports a hybrid audience when they're seeking to do something as a group, rather than we've just got in-room people doing the hard work and everybody else online is just watching.
Yeah, so it draws them in.
Yeah.
But it also, Dom, it's worth mentioning, when you're working with a multi-language group, so a group that perhaps the primary language isn't their first language, then there is an option for them to type, which tends to be a bit more accurate, and they can express themselves actually either in their native language, the one they're most comfortable with, or a second language that might take them a little longer. And encouraging them to type is perhaps easier than them putting their hand up and constructing a valid scientific point in a non-native language. But we're also trying to accommodate those who feel less able for whatever reason to speak out in a large crowd. I do find people who used to be called introverts and extroverts, who I refer to as activists, extroverts, people always willing to contribute, and people who used to be called introverts, who I call reflectors, who just need a little bit more time to formulate their ideas. And I'm guarantee that the ideas are of decent, if not better quality than those that are kind of instantly available from the activists. So if you give people time to think, perhaps, talk in their smaller table groups. Some people find it much more comfortable to talk in 2s or 3s or in table groups of 7 or 8 before they express an idea to a whole room of 200 people. So giving them that ability, giving them the tools so that everybody's got access to it, whether you're remotely connecting to the event or whether you're in the room, just equalizes the landscape so that everybody has the ability to contribute fully, transparently, and without having to change the way or what they're saying to accommodate what they think people might react with in the room.
Yeah.
So it's a much more genuine conversation.
Yeah, and I agree. Well, we've talked quite a lot about the technology, of course, and as we come to the end of this episode, maybe it's worth just reflecting on why a client or why an organizer would want to. What's the benefit of running a hybrid event? Isn't it just extra work and another audience or another event to worry about whilst they're also running the in-person event? And my reaction to that is that it broadens the reach. We said at the top of the episode, not everyone can afford to travel, has the time to travel. It's very expensive to get to certain locations, and with the changes in the States over the last few months, it's getting even harder. And we've heard from a number of people that they're having to change the way that they're formatting their event. And I certainly think from hybrid should be on the table as a consideration. If you work with people like us who know it inside out, have done it many times before, it isn't a stretch to deliver. It doesn't have to be more expensive, and it can be much more inclusive because you get everybody as ability to be heard, not just those that can afford the time and cost to travel to the in-person location.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think, and that's why one of the early conversations we have with our clients is to lay out the options, basically, and hybrid is much more now included as an option. Yeah. To the point, Don, where we've run events where effectively there's half a dozen people in the room, half of which are the tech support team. So we're almost producing a show from a single location where 80-90% of the participants are online. They may even be in small hubs where they're collecting in an office or so on. Distinctly remember, linking up 2 locations is a really good way of doing it to avoid the travel. But cost and cost benefit is something we've talked about in the previous episodes. It's much more of a criteria now that we start with, which is how do you want to play this? What are the investment implications of the different options, and how can we create flexibility to ensure that people have the best possible experience they have in an event, irrespective of their location. Yes. And as we've said in this podcast, the opportunity through thoughtful design and preparation and good planning, and in combination with a real thorough understanding and insight into what the technologies can bring, and careful and diligent use of those technologies can really create an event that is certainly as powerful and valuable to all the participants as compared with them flying into a different country, being in a hotel for 2 or 3 days and attending an in-person event. So, I'm really excited about what the future for hybrid events is going to be, because I think we're moving into a completely different, more flexible environment of work. And I think hybrid events is going to play a really significant part in that.
Fantastic. I don't think I can do better than that, Steve. Well said.
Great stuff.
So on that note, I think we should thank our audience for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Let us know what you think and put anything in the comments and we'll respond. Thanks. Cheers, Don.